Teaching singers how to read music is one of the crusades for Pavon Publishing. Advance is a curriculum designed for the choral classroom. The lessons are short and focused, requiring only about 5 minutes, and include optional quizzes and finals. The authors, Ted Reed and Alan Petker, both teachers and conductors who have worked with singers of all ages, targeted the high school classroom and wanted to include the church choir room as well. We sat down with Alan Petker to discuss why singers so often don't learn to read music, why past curricula have not worked, and why Advance is a new solution to this old problem.
Let me share what I think has been the problem in why choral teachers haven't been teaching their students music literacy. And I think one of the first things is the materials are often, they're too costly. They're designed as whole books. It's almost more like theory. And you get to the second problem is there's not enough time in a choral classroom to teach theory. You look at the instrumental situation, for instance, let's say an orchestra versus a choir. Those students are studying their instrument outside of the classroom. The choral teacher has a challenge in that they may not be studying their voice, probably are not studying the voice outside of the classroom. So it's got to happen there. And that's where it comes to challenge because there's not enough time to do both in there. So that's been a problem. And I think then singers don't often recognize the need themselves. They think, I can sing. Why do I need to have to learn how to read it? You know, that's not fun. And then you have different learning levels right within the classroom. The kids themselves, some because they're studying an instrument, they already know that. I don't want to waste time going back to stuff that some other kid doesn't know. So I think you've got that problem. But what we've done with the whole advanced thing is we took all those different things. And the first one was we packaged it differently. So you've got a CD. A CD that, there's your CD. For less than 50 bucks, you've got a CD that has 89 different lessons. It covers almost everything just in the basics of music literacy. It starts off with just names of what the names are, the things they're working in, goes into rhythms, so you can read rhythms, and goes on into intervals, so they can get that relationship. All that's in their duplication license. So for that dollar value, you now can run those off, the lessons, year after year after year. You buy it once, you got it. I mean, it's so cost effective. Then the lessons are 5 minutes long. They're designed to be taught in 5 minutes. Start off with a little bit of stuff and only goes this far. You know, and they got a little spot, they put their name and the date on the paper, it's all on here. Then we have a sidebar. Every lesson has a sidebar that includes things like anecdotes, quotes, they've got some humor, it's got some activities that they can apply it to their own music, in fact, or things they can go do. All that's in the sidebar, including, this is the last one, this is bringing the classroom together, a word to the wise and a note for the know-it-all. And those little things are to bring the class together so that the kids that know a lot will want to help and be the teacher's aid, you might say, to bring that together and give some self-esteem to those who are not there. And so those are the things. We addressed all of them in every single lesson. There it is that covers all that. Plus there's quizzes, there's things you can do with final exams. I mean, all of this has been put together with a whole different approach. I think it's smart. We've gotten a lot of great response, people that really are enjoying what's being offered here. I don't think this has been offered this way before, and the choral classroom teachers are realizing this is a need they haven't been able to fill before, for all the reasons I shared earlier. In fact, let me read one. I got one just the other day, and this came in from Julia House, who's a director out in Florida. And she writes, thank you so much. I really love the lessons. My students are of various levels of abilities, and it really helps to start at the beginning as these lessons have. This way, the more advanced can help the new ones, and all will eventually be caught up. This is one of the best teaching tools I've used, and I've been teaching music in the public schools for 22 years. It's great. Thank you so much. Woohoo! Man, did I save this one. Glad I could share it. This is the very first lesson in names, and it starts off by talking about what soprano, alto, and tenor bass means. Who are they? Highest pitches, lowest pitches, etc. What the abbreviation, SATB, is. And we give some of the other voicings, and then the design. We show what the staff looks like when it's open score or closed score. We give a footnote worth knowing. A cappella is a Latin expression meaning sung without instrumental accompaniment. In other words, voices only. And then on that sidebar, a word to the wise, choirs all over the world have singers who can't read music. Help to change that. The notes for the know-it-all. Imagine if actors couldn't read words. How silly. The analogy. You can put the puzzle together faster and more completely when you have all the pieces. And then we give an activity. Using your music, find the soprano part, alto, tenor, bass. Is it a cappella? And then we finish with a quote on each one of these pages. So that's an example.
Hold me, calm and easy.
There is a handbook, and they can print it out. It's all on there. There are some general teaching strategies that they can certainly use, but then we go lesson by lesson with some specific things that they can use. And of course, that table of contents, that's in there so they can see the sequence. They can do it differently, fitting their own. Maybe they need to deal with rhythm, and that's where they need to put their emphasis. Fine, use that sequence. But it does go into some real detailed information that is there for them to read about things that they can add to the lesson. Here is an analogy. A yardstick can be used to measure yards, feet, or inches, but it is still called a yardstick. Okay, and then we go to a parallel. In 6/8 time, an eighth note receives one count. In a different time signature, the number of counts may change, but it will still be called an eighth note. So it's little things like that that are useful. We go into also how do they write counts in music. That is the kind of stuff that really helps singers be able to learn a rhythm and then remember how to mark their music so it's useful in application. This one deals with the 3/4 time meter, and it says, number one, let's decipher the meaning of the 3/4 time signature. The top number equals number of counts per bar, 3, and the bottom number. So it goes through, you might say, very typically, but it's just that it spells it all out. It shows what 3/4 looks like when you have a whole bunch of notes in different types of rhythms. Then it has a little lesson. You fill in the missing note values. All this takes 5 minutes, and it's going to acquaint you with 3/4 in an understanding way. And once again, has the sidebar with a bunch of fun things to read. In fact, I'll share if I can. Just Ezra Pound, a quote, "Music rots when it gets too far from the dance. Poetry atrophies when it gets too far from music." I like that. So this is an example from the intervals. This one, it's organized again, the table of contents will explain that better, but this one's under the heading of imperfect intervals. And we're talking about minor thirds here. And it gives you a couple things that you can read here. I like that it says all thirds have two things in common. And it gives, A is that in the musical alphabet, all thirds skip a letter name between the two notes making the interval, like A to C, B to D, and it shows that there on the page. And then the other thing is, on the staff, thirds are always distanced line to the nearest line or space to the nearest space, and they can see that. Just some things to grab onto. There's also, you notice, a musical keyboard. So we relate it to a keyboard, something that's probably in the choral classroom. They can go and actually look at it, have it heard, played. Those are things we put for the teacher in the handbook that's provided for them. And then there's some ways to use it. It talks about the little sign one can use for a minor interval. Well, that's a nice thing to everyone to learn, so they can, put notes in their music as they're going. And from the sidebar, allow me to read a word to the wise. Here's a quote: "Those who make peaceful resolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable." That's John F. Kennedy. Didn't know that he had things to say about the music classroom, did you? And there's an anonymous quote down here. It's a classic. "Sorry, but my karma just ran over your dogma." When you read those in the classroom, they just unify the group. It works. It actually does. And so going through this becomes more fun, and they learn some good stuff.